letting them know the services that they need, they'll come from a locality where they were and they'll say, well, you know what? I didn't know that existed. So now presenting it to them makes it all the difference. So now when we go in to do a pre-release, they actually know who they're going to be in contact with once they get out. So that's a win-win for them and then for us as well as community partners. So Virginia Cares and People Incorporated, what brings us together? One of the biggest things that brings us together as nonprofits is that with Virginia Cares, we lead the statewide network for reentry program that reduces recidivism. It promotes public safety and provides supportive services to assist returning citizens to lead successful lives. One of the things what we do with Virginia Cares is in this particular program, we help individuals that are released from prison. They learn how to confidently reintegrate with families, communities, the job market through a variety of training, referrals, services. We teach them how to make better life choices. So, in a sense, we make them better and not bitter in the circumstance that they're in. We strengthen and we build their relationships with their families. A lot of times through our orientations, we tell them don't burn your bridges. You know, we all make mistakes. Let's now work on them. Let's make sure that our mistakes don't just define us, but they can deliver us when we work on them. We obtain jobs for them, understanding what they have in the relationship with their challenges. So a lot of the times what we do is when we have someone that comes in and there's like with Mr. Williams or Miss Anglin, how do I know I'm doing the right thing? So through assessments, we want to make sure that we're going to get them to the proper job or at least have the correct training for the job that they're looking for. Because one of the biggest things that we're looking for out of our individuals is longevity. We want to make sure that they stay in a position that's suited for them. Key services for those that qualify for and receive financial aid. We help them with job readiness. We do training, temporary employment, and sometimes full-time employment as well. We work with the workforce centers throughout the localities in the area. We also have career development, relationships, and self-awareness training, ongoing supportive services. In addition, we work with the participants from Virginia Cares and other service agencies, probation officers, churches, and we'll talk about what the reentry side of that looks like. Even right here in Culpeper at District 26, we have a reentry council there as well. We help them with their basic needs. And when we say basic needs, we're talking about the food, the clothing, helping through referrals for housing and shelter, transportation, and identification as well. We help them with their DMV statements. So when they come to us with a compliance summary from DMV, it states on that compliance summary, what are these things that you need to do to initiate getting your license back? So we want to make sure that we help them. So you can have someone with a reinstatement fee. Some of them are up to $1,000 or more. Yeah, because they've been incarcerated and now their insurance has lapsed.
Mm.
And in that lapse of insurance with DMV, you know, they can charge you up to $500. So now the biggest thing is how do I get that money? How do I get that big lump sum? Well, we educate them with DMV because now you don't pay that lump sum up front. You can actually pay $25 a month and get on a payment plan. Once you've gotten on that payment plan, as long as you don't deviate that, that's what you can do to get your license back. So you can actually get it right then, pay your reinstatement fee and everything that's in your compliance, and start the process over and only pay $25 a month for that as well. With additional services, we do legal, medical, family counseling, mental health, substance abuse, financial counseling. We work with different banks for individuals that have been incarcerated for a long time, never had a checking account, never had a savings account, don't know how to do one. You know, what does a debit card look like and what do I do? How do I use it? So we do trainings with individuals that help us in volunteering to show them the soft skills that they need to make sure that they're prepared to be successful once they come out. Post-release groups, support groups, educational, peer groups, group counseling. We help with building a career. Family reunification is key, bringing them back to their families. Okay. And why is that so important through the pre-release process? Because some individuals that have been incarcerated, say if it's 10, 20, 30 years or more, and the parents or aunts or uncles, whoever it is that they're coming back to, their loved ones in that time frame have gotten older as well. So there's a lack of communication. So we want to make sure that family reunification, we become what is a conduit between their loved one and that family member. So we want to bring them back and sit with them and kind of okay, what is this relationship going to look like? Because honestly, when you don't have that communication, a lot of home plans fail. They come in and they'll go and they get assessed through the Department of Corrections and they'll say, hey, look, this home plan, this is where I'm going to. But now, mom, dad, whatever, they don't know exactly, say, for instance, what John is going through or what he's been through for the last 20 years. But they do want him home and have a roof over his head to make sure that he's safe. But there still has to be a communication effort on what happened with you in the last 20 years. Hey, we're older now, let's see what we can do. So you want to have that communication to say, I have a better understanding now of what your needs are, because they were different 20 years ago on both sides. So that's why the pre-release is so important. We grow the priority in all of the correctional systems throughout the nation and prepare prisoners for their reintegration to society. Several states with formerly reentry programs report that recidivism rates for those that complete pre-release programs are significantly lower. These primarily findings demonstrate the pre-release programs, the focuses in issues such as education, job skills, community resource, drug abuse, housing, rules of community supervising, and life skills, personal identification, family reunification. So all of those things prepare them. So think about it this way. If you were going to be taught something, say for instance, you're going to go and have HVAC training, you're going to come out, you're not going to know everything about that training. Someone is going to have to let you know what that is. So inside the institutions now, they can get certifications with certain schools. So we do HVAC, we can do hardcore skills, heavy equipment. So a lot of these things that they're getting, they're coming out with certificates now in certain institutions. So they don't have to wait when they come out to actually get those skill sets. So that's a big plus that we're trying to have that initiative across the board and throughout the state. We actually do it over here at Coffeewood. So Coffeewood's ahead of the game. So Culpeper's doing pretty well when it comes to that initiative. So when it comes to the resources available, when it comes to the reentry side of it and the councils, we want to make sure that we have a broad array of individuals that sit on that council, just like board members here. We want to make sure that we have someone in every facet that can help them. So when it comes to the housing, the job market, when it comes to just soft skills, when it comes to family reunification, all these things, we have individuals that sit on the board. My board consists of about 130. So just for reentry. And we do a regular anywhere between 30 and 40 people every first Wednesday. Our biggest push right now is getting that reentry council into the jails. So in Fredericksburg right now, we are actually in RRJ. We had a big launch, so the reentry teams are going to be going in there. I want to move that same initiative here to where the reentry team goes inside the jail. So then that way, what are we doing? We're looking at the individuals that are coming out within 3 to 6 months to have that pre-release done. So now they actually sit down with a provider, someone from social service, from Medicaid and SNAP, someone from Workforce Center like Marty, that you can sit down with and say, hey, this is what we have. These are the jobs that are available. Because it's best to find out what that particular background is for that person to see where they're going to be suited for when they get out for a post-release service. So that's why the reentry councils are consistent, making sure that they have a collaborative and a diversified reentry council together. With these councils, they shape and form what we recommend councils to operate in similar format. We recognize that they need the community and ultimately dictate what the council does is how they do it. Some councils may focus specifically on one jail, while others incorporated regional jails, prisons, and multi facilities. And the reason why we say this, so with myself, I'm a supervisor, a case manager, but I'm also a statewide provider for the Department of Corrections. So I've been with them for 17 years. So I go inside the jails and the institution. So I cover basically all the way up to Northern Virginia, almost right at the border of DC and Arlington, all the way down to Richmond, and then jump over to Chesapeake. So that's actually my locality that I cover. So I'm inside the jails from Northern to all the way down to Richmond, which is District 1, and that's our main office for the Department of Corrections. So when we look at these councils, as you can see, they're made up of state officials, local probations, jail, prison representatives, nonprofit homeless providers, victim services, faith-based local businesses, public housing, workforce development, mental health. local community service boards, hospitals, university, organizations, veterans, housing agencies, mental health, substance abuse. We want to make sure that they're getting all this because there's not one thing here that someone may not need. So we want to make sure we fill that. So when we have these meetings, we want to make sure, are we missing someone? Can we put them on our board? Can they sit and make sure that we get all of the services that we need to provide for our returning citizens? We address issues when it comes to education, to job, financial obligation, housing, mental health, substance abuse, for primary skills, for pre-release planning, integration, governmental level coordination, having them integrated back into society to have positive links within the community and their family with their support. We all heard it takes a village to raise a child. I think it's a little bit more than that. Maybe it should be several villages, several localities, several reentries. But we know it works. We know it works. The payoff, healthier families, communities that are stronger economically, public funding, diverted these fundings where they actually need to go. You know, helping those individuals that have been incarcerated for that funding process. I think one of the bigger things that we talk about when we have questions, we want to make sure that what is it that applies to us being here in this area? What do you see more of that you would like to see less of? Would it be more training for individuals or returning citizens? Would it say be housing for them as well? And we know right now housing is one of the biggest issues across the board, not just the state, but within all different states. Housing is one of the things when we sit down and say, okay, we have someone who's incarcerated. What do we do if they have a particular crime, a particular Barry crime that where they're going to be hindered to move in a certain locality? And we're going to put the elephant in the room. You have someone who might be a sexual offender. What do we do with that? How do we process that? Looking forward to make sure that they have housing. So that's why pre-release is so important because we want to make sure that everybody is in a safe atmosphere, but also being educated about who's in your community, where they're going, and how they're going to get there. Are they going to be working? Do they have a skill set to bring to the table? So we want to make sure that everybody's on an even plane before we go through that whole process. And that's why pre-release sets out a standard, knowing that now we have not just knowing who the individual is, but we have everything that's all about them and what they're going to need to supply and be successful in their transition. And that's what People Incorporated in Virginia Cares. So we coupled together with the two nonprofits. And what I did is I took those two nonprofits and worked them through the Department of Corrections. So now we have a playing field that is a lot broader to help that person. And you're looking at an array of services that'll help them as well in their successful transition.
Statistically wise, on average, how many folks are coming in reentry on a yearly basis? What does that number look like regionally? What does that number look like? Culpeper, what's that statewide or what you touch?
Yeah. So what I touch, we go by a quarter. So we do a monthly. Every month we go in and we do an end of month report. In that report, each locality has a certain amount of individuals that come out. My report can base anywhere between 100 or more per quarter. So that means throughout the year, I might have serviced over 400 people and sometimes more. And it depends on what their severity is. Say, for instance, somebody might only come to us coming out needing Medicaid or SNAP, but then that still makes them active of wanting a service from Virginia Cares. And that's why we consider ourselves having wraparound services, because we can actually do all of those services when they come to us. So we can do SNAP, we can do Medicaid, we can send that to our providers so they can actually have some of that done prior to them actually coming out. As long as they have an address and a contact number, they can say, hey, look, I want to have my SNAP or this information sent to this address. So pre-release is really important when it comes to that. Numbers wise, state wise, at probation, we can do an average of, anywhere between 6 to 1,000, depending on the locality and where they're coming from. Each case manager or PO can have a caseload between 50 or 100, depending on. So Fredericksburg, we're actually one of the largest in the district. So we house anywhere between, I want to say 30 to 40 POs in that building, a little bit more. Masses. Someone could have up to, 30, 40, 50, 60 persons on their caseload. So actively, when we're looking at a quarter for us, we can average, I want to say roughly anywhere between about 150 to about 200. So it could be that on an active caseload. So it can get very heavy. It can get very heavy. But you have to look at it this way. Everybody doesn't need a whole bunch of services. Someone could be just one. It could be, hey, I just need to get work. So that it's based on that percentage.
That was gonna be my next question. What's the most common request? Is it work-based? Is it workforce?
Housing, to be honest with you, Jeff. Lately, it's been housing. Yeah. Because when we look at the initiative that we had a year before with the funding sources, so what we had is a credit that went back to the individuals. So it was called an earned sentence credit. So we had almost 1,500 individuals that were coming out from the institutions in July. So we had to service those throughout the state. So with that service credit, it almost cut their time in half.
Mm.
So someone who had to do 10 years only did 5 years because of that earned sentence credit. With that earned sentence credit, some of them didn't always get reentry services. So that's why we say pre-release is really important, because they'll come out if they don't have a home plan. Now we have to structurally find somewhere for them to actually go, whether it be through hotels, whether it be through shelters, or other family members. But that was one of the biggest things. Right now, jobs are plentiful, to be honest with you. A lot of jobs are out there, especially working through the workforce centers throughout the state. A lot of jobs are there. It's getting that skill set that they need so we can make sure that transition is more successful for them than not. And I think that's most important. But housing is always that tricky monster that we're having to work with, depending on where they're going, how many are coming out, and then the severity of their background. That barrier is really what's going to state how they're going to have housing and where they're going to go to from there. Yeah.
As I previously did property management nearly a decade ago now. And it was during the Obama administration where the Department of Justice made it much easier to get housing for people coming from previously incarcerated, which simplified our process a ton.
I'm sure.
But there were a lot of landlords who were not in favor of the changes.
Correct.
Has that gotten better, the same? Because I know with the change in administration in 2016, the Department of Justice kind of rolled those back to where it was. But has that
changed? It has changed. I think because of the advocacy for programs like this, we go in and advocate. So when somebody's getting ready to apply, we want to make sure that they have that specific need. So we'll go in and advocate them with the private landlord. We'll make sure that they have that information up front. And then we'll give them numbers. We'll let them know, what does this look like as far as our recidivism rate, and then letting them know, here's what the particular background is. This person might have a job. The barrier might not be that great, but they do have, structural things to where they can actually go in, they can actually work, they can actually pay for their way. So going in and advocating for them is a plus for them as well.
And then how do you
very close. Yeah. I work with OAR from Charlottesville, Richmond, Orange. I work with Greg. I work with Overton, who is the executive director for OAR out of Fairfax. He sits on the Pappas board. So we work closely with OAR because when it comes to the nonprofit part of it, everybody doesn't have the same service provisions. So we want to make sure that they do. So if someone is better at housing, we'll work together. If someone is better at servicing the community with soft skills, we'll make sure that they have that. So it's not a sitting in your silo, not giving the effort. We want to work together to make sure that we give them all the services. So I do work closely with OAR as well.
OAR.
Offender restoration. Yes. So any questions this morning about anything when it comes to reentry? And how does that going to look here in Culpeper?
Do you work at the jail level or only at the Department of Corrections?
Both. Okay. Yeah, I'm local and state. Yeah. So by having a state provision for the Department of Corrections, I go in every institution. So Coffee, Wood, all of those institutions. Then on a local level, I work with all the jails as well.
Where's your main office?
Right here in Culpeper.
Okay.
We have a new office over on Lovers Lane, right across from DMV. Yeah, so we're at 13330.
On a local level, how has the relationship with the new sheriff, how has that changed? Have you seen a shift?
Not as of yet.
Mhm.
And that's only because with us transitioning, we want to make sure that everybody's put in place. And then we want to have a conversation and sit down at the table with everybody to actually see what it looks like for them, because it has been a change. It has been a change. And successfully enough in this particular area, recidivism has went down compared to, say, 5 years ago, where we were looking at the numbers then.
What are the statistics on that?
So right now for the state, we actually hit again our mark. So we are one of the lowest in the state when it comes to recidivism. The biggest thing is getting the localities together, because when you look at it, say for instance, on probation, you'll have a locality, say like Culpeper, but then the outskirts of that goes to Madison. So where there are no service provisions, that recidivism rate could be a little bit higher, because once they go back home, what do they have to look forward to? So now can make sure that they have that connection, which is a step over. So if I don't have the provisions right there in Madison, hey, can I go to Orange or can I go to Culpeper to get that same service because I'm in a different locality? Because remember, each locality is different because of the funding source. With that process, I don't have that issue because I cover the whole area. So they get a certain funding source that's client service based from me. So I don't have to worry about if you're here or if you're there, you can actually still get that. And I think that's what helps, with the percentage, because what we've proven when you're doing evidence-based practices, we want to make sure that, hey, we've already know that this works. So we want to continue that moving across the board, especially here in this area.
Kind of a piggyback on that. Is there a mandate that Virginia Cares works in all the localities and all the state facilities? Because in this,
Yeah, so
Trifold,
the
it says,
trifold,
access to the facility based on the guidelines within each facility.
correct.
So I'm wondering, for that question, you could have some local facilities that may be more or less difficult to get access to.
And this
that-
is so true.
Okay,
Yeah, depending on which locality that you're going in, every jail is different, every institution is different, every guideline for each one of those is
So
different.
there's no uniformity for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Ooh,
And that's,
okay.
and sometimes it is across the institutional but when it comes to the local jail, it can be a little different beast. And we want to make sure with us, there's no change. So we still provide the provisions, we still provide the service. We don't, I haven't had, I can speak for me, I haven't had any issue with the jail or the institution because I'm part of the correction side of it.
Right.
But one of the things, and I've heard some of my counterparts, say, well, I can't get into the jail. How are you doing it? What are you doing?
Right.
And that really is a communication problem. You want to sit at the table with your individual. So what I did moving forward, when it comes to the localities of the jail, I don't leave anybody out. I sat down, I got with Craig, and I got with his pre-trial. I got with him and his officers from pre-trial inside the jail. I worked with all the probation officers inside community-based locality jail. I sat each team down and I let them know what we offered, how we would do it, and that we're going to come in and do our reentry team there. And what does that look like? It's individuals just like us sitting at a table, talk about what's going on in the community inside your jail. And then what we do is we actually start casing those individuals coming out 3 to 6 months. So now we're sitting at a table talking about the 5 individuals that are going to be coming out next week and how we're going to case them move forward. And that's a plus. So that's what changes the locality level, which is all of the jails compared to an institution. And that helps because you're talking community based. We're talking someone that's just coming out right here from where they live in the area where you're looking at a bigger institution. It could be throughout the state or even going to another state. So locally, we want to make sure that, hey, we want to make sure the jail understands what we're providing, how we're doing it, but then it's not just us, it's that whole council that sits there and provides that.
I'm interested in this pre-counseling piece to find out who can check the box that's either had or eligible for a CDL. I'll stop there.
All right, yeah, and that's a good thing, because CDL right now, that in itself, through Workforce Initiative, the WIOA, which is the Workforce Initiative Opportunities Act, that's a plus. That's a win, because guys that are coming out, even women that are coming out, I have drivers all over that work with CDS, and they work up in Northern Virginia as well, and they're coming out, they're getting the jobs, and then they're moving forward with their careers. And that means a lot for someone, say, for instance, that didn't have a job before. And they come out and they get their credentials for a CDL, for A or B. Now I'm going on the road, a lot of places, they want to make sure that you have that experience. So they're getting that experience with the localities to move forward throughout the state and drive from state to state. So that's a plus through the workforce centers that we work with. Yeah.
School bus driver add-on might be a little more difficult, but.
Yeah, it depends on their
They
background.
have a running start.
Yeah, it depends on their background. At least they're coming to the table with the credentials, and that makes a difference.
So that was gonna be one of my questions.
If they do not have an event or their conviction, it would be
Correct.
something.
And that's the vetting process with us, because say, for instance, when someone comes to me, it's just like a job. If I get a contract with, say, an agency, I want to know that I'm giving them the best people. So that person sits down with me, I get their credentials, I find out what they're doing and how they work, what's their work ethic prior to them being incarcerated. And then I talk with the company, what are you looking for structurally? What type of person is it? Because hey, to be honest with you, we also have to do our homework for the companies that we're going for, just like they do it for us when they're getting in the interview process. Why do you have so much turnover as a company? Why isn't everybody staying here? So we want to make sure that even though our individuals that have that particular background and have that essential, they have that essential background for that job, we want to make sure they're moving forward, and where you're going, it's going to be good for you as well when it comes to longevity. So we have to do, it's both sides. We want to make sure that happens. Yeah. You gonna say something, Jeff?
That was a very similar question. How do you do I guess the matchmaking? Because you're not gonna, if somebody like Tripp, who, works at a bank and a financial institution, somebody who might have a financial charge
Right.
might not be the best fit.
No,
But-
if I have embezzlement, I'm not gonna send them to.
So exactly. So,
We don't want that.
I'm
to
just
happen.
kidding.
Yeah.
So that's a conversation that's had, and then you have
Oh,
with,
most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if I get with the HR person from that particular, from that company, I want to make sure, what are you looking for? And some people will say, hey, look, I don't mind if it's a misdemeanor. I don't mind if it's this, as long as it doesn't pertain to the job at hand. Okay, so I'm not giving someone theft. I'm not giving them embezzlement. I'm not going to let them have that and then send them to the bank with and just say, well, no, this is not going to work out, Marshall. I want to make sure, because if I'm sending in somebody and they're good for that particular job, he might ask and say, hey, do you have someone else? So that shows what we're doing as an initiative to move forward to give them the best people. So yes, I put the people through a process to make sure that they're getting the right ones. And guess what? Every job's not for everybody. So that's why when you're vetting them and letting them know to say, hey, look, let's find out what it is. And they might be somebody who's 75% good for the job. Is it something else that they need? So maybe we have to send them back to school for training.
Mhm.
So let's do that.
Have you seen the stigma change in terms of hiring those coming, back into the workforce?
Yeah. I mean, because, and that's the advocacy part, going back to that, knowing that, say, hey, look, we've had individuals that came from Virginia Cares or People Incorporated, they sent some good people, because we're letting them know in that pre-release. Having somebody come out that you don't know and then just set them in this position, what's going to happen? Most likely failure.
Mhm.
Okay. But now that I know this person has went through core craft skills inside of the institution through Germana, and that they've done that, so they're coming out with a certificate. I actually know them and walk through the process with them. Say, for instance, if they've been in there for years, I've known them for years
Mhm.
because I've walked through the process, what they've done. I've talked to their counselors. I've gotten with their POs. So I know this individual now. And when they come out, what success is going to look like. Because first of all, they've done success in here. So I think now they're ready to move. They might come out, they might get a little trip up or something like that, but that's the encouragement part in the relationship that we have with them to say, hey, look, it's going to happen. But here's what you can do. You came out with a certificate that shows that you can do the job. And that's the most important thing. We don't want to send someone into an individual that's going to go inside this company and they're not fit for the job. We want to make sure that they have that training and that they're moving in. And we know we can get all the training. It's just like going to college. You come out with a degree, you go work for a company, and now you have to learn all over again what it actually is that you have to do. So it's the same thing with our individuals that we work with. Yeah.
Any other questions?
How do we help those individuals not to fall back into the
Yeah.
bad habit?
Yes, the bad habits, yeah. And like I said, it goes back to the communication and that relationship. We have to first understand that we're people. All of us, we're people. And we have made mistakes, But if we sit there and base our mistakes on just the rest of our lives, we're not going to get anywhere. So what does life look like? It looks like that dot on a piece of paper, and then it looks like all of that surrounds that dot when it comes to your life. Are you going to concentrate just on that, or do you have a lot more things to do? And that's what the relationship part is with Virginia Cares and People Inc. We want to make sure that we're working on those life skills. Everything there. That doesn't define who you are. We all make mistakes every day. So now what do? We move forward away from that. Do you have a skill set? Yes. Let's start working on that. Let's build that up. Can you bring this to a corporation where you have something to bring to the table? Yes. Let's start working on that. The more positive things that we instill in a person, you're going to get more positive things out of it. So we want to make sure that, hey, look, we've all done it. You might have done something that's a little severe, but are you ready to make change? And we want to make sure that they're ready to make change. Like I said, we can put somebody in a position for a job, but are they job ready? We want to make sure they're job ready before they start their job. And that's the difference. You know, sitting there by them knowing that there's hope. When you look at an individual that sits in a cell for years on end, you have to find out where they come from. You have to find out and sit down with them and build that relationship to say, hey, look, I know you've had issues. I know you had problems, just like with substance abuse. Someone that might have came from a bad background that has a substance abuse problem. We have to find out what that void is and work on that. I might say you can't get a job because you're going here, you're going there. Come to me with the last 6 months. It might be you, but I would have gone you and find out what that void is. Is it because there is an issue with substance abuse or mental health? Let's get your help for that first. Get you structurally ready to have the longevity, not just in life and in your job, but in the history to show your footprint looks different now. And that's what we want to do, and that's why we're here.
How long do you support such individuals after they come out?
Yeah. So when they sign up with us, we're actually with them in this program for a whole year. And it looks like more like 18 months because after it's done, we still do a 6 month follow-up. So I have an assistant we call on a regular. The report is phenomenal. It's, you know, it works when they're calling, checking on you to say, how you doing today? Okay. So we know it works. We know it works. So having that follow-up, because say for instance, you get somebody for 6 months and then you say, okay, well, thank you, bye. That's not enough. You know, it's not enough. Just like with someone who has a substance abuse problem. Putting someone for 2 weeks somewhere, that doesn't fix it. It's just a Band-Aid. Let's work on the real problem because guess what? It didn't take 2 weeks for them to get where they are, mental health wise, substance abuse wise, homelessness wise. It didn't take 2 weeks. It's a process. And that process has to be ongoing until you see better. That's how it works.
Charlottesville has the hope to home to hope. I never know
Yeah.
which way it
Yes,
goes.
I understand.
They use peer navigators. Do you
Mhm.
all
Yeah.
have?
So we have peer support. It goes through the Department of Corrections as well. But I work with peer support in the state that are in different programs in different localities and then also from different companies. I believe that those individuals that have been through something are the best support for someone to advocate for them, to let them understand this is what I went through and I'm not doing it anymore. But how did I get to that point? So for them to sit down with them and say, hey, look, I structurally understand where you're coming from now. You know, I have empathy for you. So that makes a difference. So peer support is very, very, it's, when it comes to what I say about peer support, I want to say that that individual that steps up to someone that has a homeless background, why are you going through this process? What's going on? So let me sit down with you and say, hey, I've been there. I've come out of it. What did I do? Because now you're not just looking at homelessness. Sometimes it comes with depression. It comes with those social issues. It comes with not having a job or having a job that you're structured to do. So they go from job to job to job because structurally they're not ready for the job market. So let's make them ready for that market. So you have a lot of factors that work into that individual that might have to be fixed first before you move on to something else. Because like you said, when it comes to substance abuse, somebody say for instance that they have a relapse. Why did they have a relapse? Something structurally wasn't taken care of before they had a relapse. And that could only be in turn, it could be an issue that came up. I had a death in the family, brought me back to where I was. So you have to make sure that when that happens, you have someone to advocate them to come out of that and not stay in it.
Your wonderful program only works for incarcerated persons, correct?
So here's the flip side.
How
of
about
that. Yes, thank you for that.
To
And
avoid
everybody,
that.
yes, everybody always asks that question. And the services are free to them. We
Yeah,
have a service funding dollar that comes to them. But here's the great part about that. It's information. Everybody deserves information, whether you're incarcerated or not. So if someone that I know comes to me and they say, hey, hey, my sister, she's not incarcerated, but she needs work. They're going to come with me to do the workforce. They're going to learn that information to get that job. So I don't leave anyone out because this is my job for reentry. My job is to help people. Okay. And that's across the playing field.
Good.
But my main issue is, yeah, I work with reentry, but someone, hey, I need SNAP. You don't have to be incarcerated to get that information from me. We still help with that. We make sure the individuals that are coming through, not just in reentry, they bring their families. Hey, my mom, my dad, they don't have this. Can you help? So I have Miss Garcia that comes and she does Medicaid, she does disability. You do not have to be just in the reentry side of it or be a returning citizen to get that information. That belongs to everyone. We don't hold on to that.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Marshall, thank you so much.
You're
It
welcome.
was
You're welcome.
extremely educational. Thank you.